like we have the Dove Awards, in Christian music, and it's kind of like the best of the Christian music. And I don't want people to listen to Awaken Church's music and say, wow, this is really good for Christian music. I want them to say, wow, this is just really good music. And I
Mhm.
just want to challenge Christian artists and worship leaders to not just make music that's good for Christian music, but just make music that's good for music. Like we should be winning Grammys, not Dove Awards.
Welcome to Moving Mountains, a podcast where we get to celebrate together the wins that different churches and the church as a whole have experienced. I'm Pam Flannery, and each month I get the amazing opportunity to talk with church leaders from all over the country, hearing the innovative and creative ways they're reaching their communities through the struggles and the wins in their ministry. Our hope is that you'll leave each episode with fresh ideas for your ministry, as well as the tools to put that plan into action so that you can impact your community further. Let's move mountains. Hi, my name is Pam Flannery. I lead our customer communities at PushPay. Today, I have the honor to introduce you to Mike Yeager, PhD and campus pastor of Awaken Church in the San Diego area. Mike, welcome. It is such an honor to have you share with our audience today.
Oh, thanks so much, Pam. I'm so honored to be here, spend time with you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up at Awaken, and just kind of your journey.
Sure. Yeah, I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and went to school out there. I'm actually educated as an engineer and did my undergraduate out in North Texas, and then went to graduate school out in San Diego. And my wife and I moved to a city we'd never been to, and just kind of started living life in San Diego. Found Awaken Church just as people going to church, and fell in love with the church. Started serving the church and served the church for several years, and just sort of grew in leadership there. And then we were attending one of the 6 Awaken Church campuses, and had, again, just kind of risen the ranks in leadership, so to speak. And the campus pastors before us were called to go and plant a church in Seattle. And so kind of fell to us, and our lead pastor, Pastor Yeager, sat my wife and I down and asked if we would be interested in taking over the campus. And we were so honored and said yes. And so here we are, campus pastors, never ever didn't go to seminary, had never planned on being a pastor, never thought I'd be a pastor, but we are just literally living our best life, having the best time ever, just seeing God move in San Diego, and it's been a blast.
Well, you're living in one of the best cities in the country. I'm just saying, San Diego is gorgeous, and I really love your pastors. They're amazing.
They are,
And the
yes.
influence that you have not only in California, but abroad in other countries is really great to see. I know that you guys have a huge impact. Pastor Mike, you're a campus pastor, but you also are very creative in your writing. And I came across your Lionheart album that you just released this year.
Uh-huh.
The songs are inspiring. The lyrics are powerful. One of my favorite songs is Lionheart. I'd like to read a verse from that song. It says, "I will stare into the dark, proud of every battle scar. You can't shake this lion heart. I won't run. I won't be moved. I'll stand my ground because you asked me to. No devil in hell is going to get through." Oh, tell us about the battle scars and what Lionheart means to you.
Yeah, it's really interesting journey. We kind of our pastor had always had a big heart to have original music come out of our church. And for whatever reason, the church has been around for 16 years, and kind of wasn't the season for that. And then literally right before COVID hit, I was in a meeting with my pastor, Pastor Yeager, and he'd kind of really just felt like now is the season. I think it was actually really amazing how prophetic he was. Not, again, this was in February, really right before the pandemic kind of came to our shores. And so he was like, I think it's time. And I actually had started my career as a musician. I was a touring guitar player, and had been a songwriter, but really laid that part of my life down to start a family and pursue my educational pursuits. And it just, after I heard, his heart and his vision, it just kind of really ignited this fire in me. And so me and the rest of the team at Awaken Church started writing some songs. And it was just amazing, because the second we kind of started writing was when the pandemic hit. And so just, I know you have listeners all over the country, and every state kind of had different experiences and outworkings of the COVID-19 pandemic, but in California it was and still is, pretty wild. And so we were writing these songs dealing with a lot of, real persecution for the church. Our governor, locked down everything. Well, I say everything. He didn't lock down everything. He didn't lock down marijuana dispensaries or strip clubs or casinos or liquor stores. But the church was deemed a non-essential business, and we were told to shut down. And meanwhile, we were watching people in our community fall apart and lose businesses, lose livelihoods, just be alone and isolated and depressed. And so we saw this great need in our community, but also understood the duty of care we had to our people. So we were wrestling with, what should we do? We were told, hey, let's just 15 days to flatten the curve. And so we were like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's all bond together and kill this thing. And so we locked down and shut down. And it was like 15 days turned into 15 weeks and just kind of seemed to go on. And we just saw all of the devastation in our community and said, no way, like the church is the most essential institution on the planet. And so we opened up our doors after shutting down. I think it was in March of 2020. We reopened in August, mid-August of 2020, and got a lot of heat for that, a lot of heat. We were one of very few churches that did open up. And all the while we're writing these songs, and my wife and I are brand new pastors. I mean, we took over as pastors January 2020, and then all of a sudden just, kind of got thrown to the wolves in some senses with the pandemic and unprecedented racial tensions after George Floyd died, and just all kinds of unrest and people upset about this and that. And so we're just kind of, my wife and I are just hanging on for dear life, just trying to pastor our church. Meanwhile, this music's going on. And that song Lionheart and the verse you read was really birthed out of just my heroes in the faith, looking to my pastors Yeager and Leanne Matthesius, to Dr. Matt and Michaela Hubbard, John and Becky Heinrichs, pastors at different campuses at Awaken Church that are, a little older than us and have been doing it longer than us, and just really seeing their courage in the way that they face the heat, face the persecution. I mean, they were getting, and we were getting death threats and just hate messages on Instagram, like ongoing incessantly. So the first part of that verse, I'll stare into the dark, proud of every battle scar, you can't shake this lion heart, is really just kind of me channeling the courage of my pastors. And then the second half, where it talks about, I won't run, I won't be moved, I'll stand my ground because you asked me to, no devil in hell is going to get through, really comes from a verse out of, I think it's 2 Samuel 23, and it's one of David's mighty men named Shammah. Bible says that he stands his ground in a field of lentils, and the Philistines are coming at him, and he just says, there's no way you're getting through this field. And so he, takes down single-handedly, I think it was like 300 Philistines. And it was kind of interesting because that field of lentil, it's not very special. A field of lentils doesn't really sound very glamorous, very sexy, but it represented the sustenance and the physical provision of the Israelites. And it's just so interesting because in 2020, it was really the provision and the sustenance was one of the main things that was really snatched from people. People that had started businesses and restaurants and lifelong dreams that had to shut their doors. And so it just seemed very, that story of David's mighty man, Shammah, standing his ground in a field of lentils against the onslaught, just was so relevant for 2020. And so that second half of the verse really kind of came from that. So yeah, that's the story.
Wow, I love that. I didn't know that that's what that field meant. So that has even deeper meaning for the song. Thank you
Right.
for sharing that. I really appreciate it. There's depth. It's not a worship song that you're kind of used to hearing. Your style is very different too, I noticed. It almost has like it doesn't have that drum beat in it, but you can kind of feel like you're get
Yeah,
that stirring, right?
sure. Yeah, it's got a little attitude, a little swagger for
It
sure.
does. I love the attitude. Yeah, I'm a person of attitude, so I love that.
Mhm.
Another great song on the album is Authority, which is about everything bowing its knees to the King of Kings and his authority and the authority that he gives believers. Tell us about this song and what that means to you.
Yeah, I think the most important part of that song is, what you just mentioned. It's the authority transfer. And I think I would say it's pretty ubiquitous consensus among believers that God is the source of all authority, that he is all powerful. And, I don't think there's much debate over that. But I think one thing that has really been lost in the modern church is that authority has actually been transferred to us. And, I think about, and I certainly don't mean this in any disparaging way towards this song, because I think it's a beautiful song. And we sing it and sang it for a very long time in our church. But a song called Tremble by, I think it's by Mosaic out in LA, and actually co-written by a very dear friend of mine, Hank Bentley, who actually married my wife and I. So
Yeah.
great song, beautiful song. And it talks about, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. And it's true. That is of course very, very true, and powerful. But it's also, half of the story, because the reality is we make the darkness tremble too. We have been given the same authority. Jesus in Luke 10:19 says, behold, I give you authority to go out and trample over serpents and scorpions. And so I think, that song is important and very strategic. We want to write music that resurrects Christian courage.
Yeah.
And that song talks about, the chorus is, let your authority rise in me, break every stronghold, and goes on in the second half, kind of the post chorus, if you will, talks about, and everything must bow its knee to the King of Kings and your authority. But then it says, the second half of that says, and when I speak, darkness must flee, for you have given me your authority. And so it talks about, the authority of God, and but then also about the transfer of that authority. And really is such an important part of being a believer, is that we recognize, yes, that God is the source of the authority, but we are his vice regents in the earth. He has actually given us the authority and has called us into divine partnership to be the agents of that authority in the earth. And so that song really became, that too is really, it has a different sound. It doesn't sound like a, kind of what you're used to hearing out of big CCM worship ballads, but people really grabbed on to it, and it really kind of became, we didn't sort of like peg it as like, the big single, but it really became kind of the rallying cry of our church, and really has kind of emerged as everybody's sort of favorite song. And I think it's because of that. I think it sounds fresh and sounds awesome, but I think it also carries a message that emboldens people. And that's something that the world desperately needs from those who call themselves Christ followers.
Worship is such a vital piece for us as Christians, and one of my favorite features in PushPay's CHMS is the lyric and chord chart editor. This feature was designed specifically to make things simpler for your worship team. It allows them to easily import songs into the song library and even write their own songs within the tool. They can change the key of a song or the chart formatting and attach the song to your worship service plan for their team to have access. If you haven't checked out our CHMS yet, get in touch with the PushPay team to find out how you can simplify your worship services. Pastor Mike, what would you say to pastors, leaders, worship leaders who maybe they just, each Sunday or weekend, whenever they have their services, they'll sing songs that have already been written, which are great. Maybe they're singing hymns that, we've sang over the years that are great. But I believe that there's a song in all of us. I really do, because we go through, I just recently heard, God doesn't waste pain. And that really struck me. And I thought, he doesn't waste pain.
Mm-hmm.
And from pain is usually when we have the depths of our soul kind of barren before ourselves, in God. And then from that, lyrics can be written, songs can be written, encouraging words can be written. What would you say to leaders who maybe have not stepped out in that yet?
As far as writing songs and making music, I've been really just overtaken by the book of Daniel in this season of history. And we were, the Bible is just sort of, it's called scripture. And you'll find, if you read your Bible and allow God to speak to you through it, that there is patterns in the Bible that sort of repeat themselves, and the actors may change, but the narratives kind of remain the same. And we really are in a Daniel season. And, the Israelites were in Babylon captivity, and Babylon really represents the world and secularism and worldly culture. And are we not, has the church not really been overtaken in this hour by the world? And then, in Daniel chapter 1, Daniel writes that, King Nebuchadnezzar, sacked Jerusalem and besieged it. But then it's really interesting, because Daniel points out that he took treasures, and I think some translations, say vessels, like different gold and silver cups and different vessels, and he actually brings them back to Babylon and puts them on display in his treasure room. And it really struck me as interesting that the treasures of the people of God were stolen and put on display in Babylon, in the treasure houses of Babylon. And how true is it that there are so many like huge pop stars that got their start in church, really singing and letting their artistry be an instrument for God. You know, you look at Whitney Houston, Katy Perry, Jack White, from the White Stripes, I think originally was going to go to seminary and then ended up going into music, and Jessica Simpson and John Legend even. And not that, but the reality is I can tell you none of them are not out like vocally outspoken for God. I can tell you that much. And they were originally, instruments for the kingdom. And so I just think I would want to see Christian music be like, we have the Dove Awards, in Christian music, and it's kind of like the best of the Christian music. And I don't want people to listen to Awaken Church's music and say, wow, this is really good for Christian music. I want them to say, wow, this is just really good music. And I just want to challenge Christian artists and worship leaders to not just make music that's good for Christian music, but just make music that's good for music. Like, we should be winning Grammys, not Dove Awards. And so, yeah, I think and Daniel has that story. Daniel was known all throughout Babylon for being incredibly wise, incredibly successful, an incredibly good steward, a good business person, and he was recognized and actually was put in charge of provinces in Babylon. So it wasn't like he was just famous among the children of Israel in Babylon. He was actually famous in all of Babylon. So yeah, I just want to encourage people to be great, be courageous, and just live a life worthy of the calling, because it is a wild ride and a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like for King and Country have done that well.
So interesting for you to say that, because actually, the producer that we're working with was their bass player for like 5 years, and so every time they would actually come through San Diego, I'd always go hang out with them. So yeah, they're great people and amazing believers and amazing musicians, and yeah, they don't make great Christian music, they make great music.
They do.
Yes,
It's refreshing. Yeah.
sure.
I love everything they do. Actually, they're coming to Colorado, I think, soon. So might have to get tickets. And I don't usually go to concerts, but they would be one I think I would go to because they're
Yeah.
really good. Well, I know that you are really busy. Your schedule is full, not only being a campus pastor, but also writing music and just being a pastor to people, especially during this time when people are so discouraged and they're feeling, like, is this ever going to end? And
Sure.
so I really appreciate you taking time. We love partnering with you, as a PushPay customer. We are just so thankful for you guys. Yeah, I just can't say enough about you guys. And I do want to say that your pastors, we would watch them. They would come up on Facebook, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, and I would see them. And I think they were in their living room at the time, and they would just share from their heart. And my husband and I would just listen and be so encouraged. I don't know that they realized the reach that they had because, we didn't all write in or, comment, or I'm sure I hit like and I commented, but it was just so impactful and so encouraging, and it stirred us up. It really did. And I'm very thankful for all of you.
Thank you. Yes, they are two of the most courageous people that I have ever met. Just to be able to serve under them is just it's an honor. And our lives, my wife and I's, our life, our children's lives are just very different. And I really think San Diego would be a very different place without them. So yes,
I agree.
as
I
well.
agree. And they came from Australia, is that right?
Yeah, which I think is interesting. We they're missionaries. They left Australia to plant a church here in San Diego. They came here, I think, 16 years ago with at the time, I think it was 3 boys. I don't think their daughter had been. I think their daughter was born here in the United States. I mean, hearing Pastor Yeager tell the story is just amazing. I mean, they landed here, literally did not know one soul, but just felt called by God to plant a church in San Diego, had never been here, and just here we are. I say here we are, like, I've only been here about 9 years, so I wasn't there from the very beginning, but here they are 16 years later. We've got, almost 10,000 people that come to one of our campuses every week. And we've got 5 campuses in San Diego, 1 in Salt Lake City, and just seems like planting new campuses every year and making music and taking ground and being a voice for the truth. And it's a sight to see for sure.
Well, we appreciate you guys a lot. Thank you for sharing with us today. We're inspired. Where can our listeners find your album, Lionheart?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on, all DSPs, all digital service providers. So you can find us on Apple Music, on Spotify. You can say, Alexa, play Awaken Music, and just ask her to play the Lionheart album. So that's out now, and then we have a full-length album that's going to be coming out in July of 2022. So we're super excited, and find us on YouTube. Just search Awaken Music on YouTube and see some music videos and other content we have. So, yeah, thanks so much for having me, Pam.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike. We appreciate you.
Of course, you bet.
I want to say thanks to Mike for chatting with me. It's always a privilege speaking with him. We're honored to be able to share their song, Lionheart, with you now, and believe that this song will bring encouragement to you all. Make sure to check out their album on streaming services. Just look for Lionheart by Awaken Music. And if you love what you hear and you want to add their songs to your worship list, Awaken Church has given us permission to share their lyric and chord charts with you, including their latest single, Come What May. Look for the link in the description of this episode to find out how you can access these today. We believe your church will be inspired by these wonderful songs.
I will stare into the dark, proud of every battle scar. You can't shake this lion heart. I won't run, I won't be moved. I'll stand my post 'cause you asked me to. No devil in hell will get through. No devil in hell is gonna get through. You come at me with a sword, but I've got a sling. Just one soul is all I need. You're in for awaken me. Dry bones start to move and shake. An army stands now in their place. With the one voice they will proclaim. You come at me with a sword, but I've got a sling. Just one stone is all I need. You're in for awaken me. I will stare into the dark, proud of every battle scar. You can't shake this lion heart. No, you can't shake this lion heart. You come at me with a sword, but I've got a sling. Just one stone is all I need. You're in for
been Push Pay's Moving Mountain podcast, real talk from church leaders about overcoming challenges and growing their ministries. If you'd like to learn more about Church Stack or any of the features mentioned in our podcast, visit us at pushpay.com. Make sure you subscribe so that you can get notified whenever a new episode comes out. You don't want to miss out on any of these great conversations with amazing people. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.